Before we begin, don't let the ceasefire in Gaza take your eyes off what is going on there. The people there still need a lot of our help. Linked below will be the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund and the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions campaign. I won't go into more specific details, but I do believe that they want us to take our eyes off what is going on over there, and we cannot let that happen. Every little thing you can do can make a world of difference. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I enjoy the adult animated musical comedy drama Hazbin Hotel. This is very stunning and brave of me to say. I want to quickly address the certain hatedom that this show, and in particular the works of its creator, Vivian Madrano, or to go by a Christian name, Vivzipop, gets, as well as the backlash to that, which can also be very annoying. Me being the ultimate centrist, you're both very annoying. Anytime I've seen someone try to say something like positive about this show, it tends to come packaged in this way of like, oh, but I know it's very bad. I know it has flaws, and it's a weird way of them trying to defend themselves from the inevitable backlash they're going to get for saying something even remotely nice about the series. This is weird and I'm not doing it. I don't need to justify my liking of a show. You watching this, if you are a fan of Hazbin Hotel, do not need to justify why you like this show. Alternatively, if you dislike it, you also don't need to justify why you dislike it. If you're going to bombard me with every single list of sin that this woman apparently has committed on her time on the internet, I'm going to politely but firmly ask you why you are engaging with these shows and this fandom in the first place. Unless you are able to convince me she has committed a crime, I am not her friend, and therefore not interested in engaging with whatever egregious act she has committed. I will continue to watch this show and Hell of a Boss unless the quality of them turns me off. If you like this show, great. If you don't like this show, also great. Live and let live. My dinky ass YouTube channel cannot convince you otherwise. If your dislike is becoming to this level of contempt that you go on to a bunch of random YouTube videos of somebody remotely praising the show to really need to prove to them why they're not supposed to like it, I would advise you to just block her work from every social media platform you are on and just live a better life. I believe in you. And no, none of this is to say you can't criticize the show. I have criticisms of the show myself. It's just not relevant to this fucking video. If you have those, just drop them down and I'll reply to them as long as you respond to me in good faith, which is the key component here. What I am here is to talk about Loser Baby. More specifically, how it reflects on the themes of the episode it is in, Masquerade. More specifically, I want to look at how this episode reflects on the show overall and the overall worldview on its systemic hierarchies and the abuses that these pertain, and also what it means to tackle them to achieve the overall goals of the series. Like a Russian nesting doll kind of deal to get me. So I won't be diving too much into Hell of a Boss here, but I will go into some stuff we learn about the lore of the Hellaverse, as it's called, and how it sets up stuff that's important to this video. Hell is broken into two specific kinds of beings, that being the Hellborn and the Sinners. Hellborn were born in hell. Pretty self-explanatory. Sinners are those who died and were sent there. These bodies are treated extremely differently in the structured hierarchy of hell. Obvious stuff to get out of the way. Lucifer, folly, angy guy. A lot of Paradise Lost in this. If you look at these shows as extremely OC'd Bible fan fiction, you know, you're on the way in figuring this stuff out. Anyway, he rules hell. Asterisk, I'll get back to that. Go in absentia. Second in this hierarchical ranking are his ex-partner Lilith and their daughter Charlie. Lilith ruled and relished in this ruling until she left 7 years prior to the series for reasons we don't entirely know yet. We know she was in heaven because of some deal she made with her ex Adam, but that's about it. Below them in this ranking are the 7 deadly sins, which Lucifer is one of. They each run a ring of hell, where Pride, Lucifer's the main, sits on the top. The other sins are explored more in Hell of a Boss, but again, we're not talking about that show. Here's where things get a bit more complicated. Sinners and Hellborn seem to be treated and governed completely differently. As I mentioned, the 7 rings. Hellborn can traverse to them openly as they please. Sinners are trapped in Pride. Hellborn are also exempt from the yearly exterminations. Hellborn are also fashioned within a caste system where you are born into a place in this social order, like the hellhounds, like the imps, etc., and it's nearly impossible to break out of it. On top of this, there are demon royalty who hold dominion over the Hellborn in the different drinks. Stolas, the giant owl dude you've likely heard a lot of hearty debate about, is part of the most powerful, the Goetia, and is the prince and heir apparent. Moving on to sinners, and those in charge of them on the ground level are the overlords. These are comprised of sinners who rose above the ranks to run different factions of the Pride Ring. If you are confused about this, do not worry. Hell of a Boss also makes it horrifically unclear how any of this works. Maybe something Viv said on a Tumblr post or a live stream or some shit makes this a bit clearer, but I'm not spending my precious seconds on this planet going over what's probably 10,000 fucking reams of social media posts to try to gain some understanding of this shit. So let's just go with the basics. Overlord's powerful. The way they gain this power is through territorial fighting and the leverage of ownership of souls. For the former, we actually see this in action with Cherry Bomb and Serpentis, both aspiring overlords at the start of the series, taking on each other in combat in the pilot. And the latter of these two attacks Alistair later on for the same reason. As for the collection of souls, it's stated that they are extremely powerful. It would explain why overlords exhibit a lot more power than your average sinner like Alistair. How they gain this control is through soul contracts, which are eternal and cannot be broken. Once you sign them, you are tethered to the overlord you made this deal with forever. And by forever, I don't even mean past the realm of death. Sinners cannot be killed outside of angelic weapons. They are already dead. So this goes on for eternity. So aside the obvious thing that this is like essentially slavery, this is exploitative. Each of the overlords we see are not strictly evil. Honestly, aside the V's, they are varying degrees of okay. Kind of goes by that old adage of power doesn't corrupt, power reveals. Let's examine what it reveals about the overlords in charge of our two boyos. Valentino utilizes his power through love bombing. He compliments you fiercely and lifts you up on a pedestal. And when you are in his grasp, he shows his true contempt. He's a sleazy porn producer who boasts his talent into signing away their souls to him as part of an agreement. When he doesn't get his way, he breaks down in phases, like bombarding Angel does with pleading texts until he just cuts him down viciously in episode 2.
You actually think you can change? Addict trash like you doesn't change.
And straight up assaulting him when he thinks he's using Charlie to glad hand him in episode 4. Compare this to fellow V Vox, who's a lot faster to lose his temper but will eventually maintain composure and starts to slightly manipulate people. No, that's more Alistair's style. Now, is he as abusive as Val? I think most people would agree no. Is he abusive to Husk? Well, it may not be as physical, it may not be as frequent or nasty or personal or psychosexual, but I think it's apparent in the way he uses fear and intimidation on Husk when he feels he's crossed a line. His machinations are a lot more underhanded and calculated. He doesn't seem to want to push people into deals, and he does coerce them into coming up to him. Like it's implied he did with Husk, or openly appears to be doing so with Charlie. So why bring this all up? Demons torment each other and abuse power. This is not really anything new. But how they abuse this power is a lot closer to home. Because even with all the violence and the pillaging the Honor Sinners do, they have nowhere near the power to maintain this kind of order and consistent acquiescence as the overlords do. Because, other demons can retaliate as easily if you're on a level playing field. You can't do that with the fucking owners of the land, especially if you're in a soul contract. These norms and social beliefs are upheld in a society that accepts them and their rule because they own the most souls. Their abuse is normalized.
Everyone's shitty! Hello! We live in hell!
Because they live in a culture that just accepts these evil, overwhelming social forces as the norms. This is what sinners deserve. And when you benefit from these normalizations, when you get to the top of these hierarchies, you are more tempted and likely to take advantage of this power and abuse it. I think a lot of a video I've mentioned on this channel previously, Shalika's overview of WandaVision, and particularly how power tends to get abused.
Abuse frequently occurs without much malicious intent. It happens simply because when one has power, it's easier to abuse it than not.
Let's go Charlie. Now, Charlie is not abusive. in any sense. She's a cinnamon bun. I love her. But she absolutely has privilege, and she takes advantage of that, even unconsciously. In the pilot, she gets on a talk show to push her hotel because she's the princess of hell. She tends to just take help from extremely obviously suspicious people like Alistair because she's sheltered, and it's clearly indicated she's just used to getting what she wants and doesn't question it. Maggie has to question literally every naive thing she does because this is an obvious blind spot. When Cherry Bomb pushes back on taking out all of the hotel crew outside of Angel Dust, Charlie just hands her a bunch of money and she goes along. This is obviously a joke, but it demonstrates how easy she does this shit to make things go her way. She gets her dad to organize a meeting on Heaven, which ends so badly she puts a target on her friends. And yes, in Masquerade, even taking into account Vaggy was the one who encouraged her to do this, she tries to push her stature to get Valentino to let Angel Dust stay at the hotel more. This results in Angel Dust getting assaulted. Now, is any of this Charlie's fault? No, of course not. She tends to just not think clearly on her whims, but they're so obviously well-intentioned. It appears, especially with the ending of the finale, she's realizing she can't just whim her ideals into reality. And I think her privilege holds her back on any self-awareness of her actions having consequences. Because just relying on being the princess of hell is easier than not. Man, the monsters just bring shit onto their doorstep alone, huh? Look at Lucifer. He's at fault for letting the exterminations happen in the first place. Except he isn't. Not entirely. Because he's also not entirely at charge here. He's the king of hell, sure, but hell is not self-determining, is it? It's under Heaven's dominion. So Heaven doesn't really have a direct influence over hell's operations. It's extremely hands-off, leaves it to its own devices. But it does have control over hell. And we know this because of the exterminations.
Traditionally, genocide occurs when the genociders have control over the genocided. And even with the negotiations Lucifer does, considering the scale of the exterminations and how normalized it is within the society of hell, that would preclude that Heaven has dominion and control over hell's forte, even if they are not directly in charge of its day-to-day activities, like with the overlords and what have you.
Keeping this into consideration, I'm going to be using colonialism a lot while describing allusions to heaven and hell. But I don't really think it's entirely accurate to this relationship. Despite the line in Hell of a Boss implying it, and a gesture implying this is bullshit, heaven doesn't appear to have colonized hell. It created it for the sinners. I just think these allusions are too on the nose to ignore, so we'll talk about colonialism. If we find out that hell was actually colonized by heaven, absolutely ignore everything I just said. Even with Lucifer being in charge, he has super little sway with heaven. He gets him not to kill Hellborn, implied to protect Charlie, and gets her a meeting with heaven, but even then, that was part of Sarah's plan to stop her talking about redeeming sinners because she was paranoid Charlie was starting an invasion. She obviously had no interest in listening to her to begin with. That's an important point too. Heaven constantly sees hell as a threat, and they will uprise and destroy their ranks. That doesn't really match the situation at all. There's never an indication that heaven were ever even so much as hinting at an uprising, unless there's details about Lilith we don't really know yet. They just took one look at how the people of hell fell behind her and weren't taking chances. They proceed to kill millions of sinners, and when one angel is killed and then revealed this was in self-defense, they speed up their operations from 1 year to 6 months to keep a grip on control. This is extremely common with colonized nations, exaggerating a threat from them to make it seem worse than the actions they are taking to prevent it to make that seem justified. This double standard and overreach is examined in Marxist scholar Pablo Freire's book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Yes, we were talking about Marxist education theory in this video analyzing the Horny Demon Show. Keep up, people. Get with the program. The oppressors see the oppressed in dehumanized fashion. Ergo, them committing violence is permitted, but them getting resistance to this violence is an act of insolence from those who are inherently vicious and savage, so they need to defend themselves from these assaults. Thankfully, there's nothing in contemporary times that would fit with Freire's hypothesis here. Oh well. We see this dehumanization in process. We see it in the cruel ways that Adam and Lute talk about sinners. We see the way Lute reacts in disgust that one of their former ranks is dating a demon, or because they were roommates. You take your pick. Violence is enacted on these people. Their nation taught them to fear, hate, and completely rob the humanity of. A cycle of violence that, well, it resonates. And why are they doing all this? What is the great design that is keeping angels and demons on separate, vastly different planes if they are very human and capable of both good and bad things?
Wait, None of you know what gets someone into heaven?
Nothing, absolutely nothing. They don't know why their entire society functions. I just think their entire belief system, zealously upheld by characters like Luke, is based on pure ideology. This is great. There's an absolute sunk cost at play here. An inability and refusal to admit they don't know how their culture functions. And rather than question this, they doggedly continue to hold us up no matter what the consequences are. It's like that famous story of Japanese soldiers who are still fighting World War II 30 years after it ended. What you're fighting for stops mattering. It's just that you're fighting, period. They will murder millions to keep hold of a hierarchy they do not know the full ideological and functional linchpin of. If they don't know why souls go to heaven or hell, then all they're doing is holding on to the hope that they are right. If you want to get a broader picture of this colonialist sunk cost mindset, I'd highly recommend Spokesman's excellent video on the topic. His point is more on civilians who will try to ignore the violent legacy of colonialism. But this kind of denial on the face of real pain and barely held together ideals can be shown by those who hold that power. Sarah just ignores Charlie's question about what determines souls getting into heaven, and even dismisses her hypothesis of getting sinners up there, even when she demonstrably shows she has a point about their chance of redemption. When it looks at season 2, this doubling down and refusal to accept the toxicity of heaven's authority will continue, particularly through Luke. Because this corrosiveness doesn't really hurt them as long as they follow their rules to the letter, as far as we can see. But to paraphrase another beloved colonizer who led to countless needless suffering and an ideologically motivated genocide, it trickles down into hell. Because even the fuckers in power down there don't seem to be enjoying themselves. Lucifer, even with his complicity in heaven's slaughtering of his people, and his dismissiveness of their value to the point of just being completely unwilling to engage with their chaotic rampages, at least when the series starts, is deeply, deeply depressed.
My daughter wants to see me. Take that, depression.
I know I've lost the Lucifer stance here. I love him too, but this is shit he's objectively done. Even taking into account he didn't really have a choice, as we've explained, and he seems to have fought to keep the Hellborn out of their crosshairs. It's not great. Alistair is in his own deal. He's desperately trying to get out of and assert his own sense of power and control. This is clearly eating at him. Valentino is an insecure dumbass who appears to be in a codependent relationship with someone much more narcissistic than him, and has an utter desire to control others to make up for his own inadequacies. Not that all of these are sympathetic, but it's true. This hierarchy is hurting everyone, as this ripple effect can have a similar impact in real life. One of the most potent examples of this is how women are treated in post-colonial nations. Trauma begets trauma. Violence begets violence. Heaven's influence is here even if they are not directly in charge of the day-to-day, because sinners see themselves as the savage. Because a system placed them there that, for all we know now, could be incredibly arbitrary reasons. But what if there was a way to beat heaven at its own game, break its unfounded ideological foundation, and save people from mass systemic torment? And this solution could be the friends we made along the way. I said I liked this show. I didn't say it was particularly subtle. Okay, I'm going to talk about Masquerade now. Sorry, we took this long to get around here. Season 1 of Hazbin Hotel appears to be a story that is broken up into 3 acts. Of the 8 episodes, the first 3 are the setup, the next 2 are the lull, and the final 3 are the payoff. Masquerade is the 4th episode, so it's bang in that middle. And it's also the odd duck, because plot-wise, you could argue it contributes the least amount to the series. If you count Lilith's cameo in the finale as a character introduction, it's the only episode of the season not to give us a new character. It also gives almost nothing to the Heaven plot. Even episode 2, which also has very little to do with the Heaven stuff, introduces Serpentius, who ends up being the beat that series ends on to prove Charlie's plan worked. I know people are going to bring up the fact that in episode 6, Angel Dust's rehabilitation is used as the example of why Charlie's plan can work to get sinners redeemed. I will also point out that this ends up going nowhere because Sarah just completely refuses to engage with it. It's a fair point, but this is more of a character thing rather than a specific plot thing. Sure, we learn more about soul contracts, but they don't have a massive role in the main plot. We'll likely get more important as the series goes on, especially with Alistair. I seem to say that a lot in the video, like Alistair, especially Alistair. Alistair is important to the show, what can I say? The big stuff is more character focused. We get a broader extent of Valentino's abuse, which was more hinted at in episode 2. It's way more explicit and more clear here, as well as Angel Dust's relationship with Husk. And I think this holds something vital to this show and may make this the most important episode of the season, maybe the series. Angel Dust and Husk are victims of an abusive system built to exploit their vulnerabilities, as systems tend to. For Husk, it was a gambling addiction. For Angel Dust, it appears to be his complete lack of self-worth and drug abuse.
Oh my god! My drugs!
This has left both characters extremely guarded and unwilling to open up. Angel Dust is more apparent in the facade of the floozy, hypersexual party boy he lives through to cope. Husk is the surly, know-it-all asshole. We see him do this at the start of the episode where he cuts through every single person in the hotel, and it seems to bother them except for Angel Dust, who has trained himself to bounce anything he perceives as a threat. He acts flippant and coy by Husk's remarks here, but it's clearly getting to him because he complains about the porn script he has to act out because of what he said back at the hotel. After Val assaults him, we get Poison, where his emotions of being in this eternal abuse cycle and having to put up this facade to stop this completely obliterating him are on overdrive. Getting back to the hotel, Husk picks up on his vulnerability and Angel Dust puts up walls again, but this causes Husk to react in kind to put him in his place. Being called fake again, this time after everything that happened that day. In the confines of a place he went to get away from Val's abuse, clearly pushes him over the edge and he storms off. Outside the bar, Angel reveals the depths of his self-loathing. Husk actually doesn't know what to say here. He clearly is not good at pulling back and letting tension breed, and it's clear to him that Angel Dust was hurt by the shit he said. So after giving an olive branch by sharing parts of his past, he knows he can't really be fake after calling Angel Dust out for being fake to comfort him, so he reaches out to him in the only way he knows how. Brutal honesty.
Power bottom at rock bottom, but you got company.
BlueSky gets a lot of shit for trivializing abuse or Husk comparing his situation to Angel's. I'm not really here to defend it against all that shit. Here's a good video that does do that. I more want to say relating their trauma to their soul contracts makes sense because Angel Dust feeling uniquely shitty makes him feel isolated, and Husk has to bluntly point out to them how this fucking both of them over majorly. They're both living in the same shit sandwich. Because yes, Husk's situation is nowhere near as bad as Angel Dust's. Even with how terrifying Alistair can be, Husk is willing to stand up to him. Honestly, Alistair doesn't tend to even like using violence all that often, even with how powerful he is, so that tracks. Angel Dust is so terrified of Val. When his half-angel bestie looks like she's about to go Super Saiyan on his ass, Angel Dust shuts her down to protect her. He knows he's fucked no matter what happens, but he's so afraid of Val's perceived power, he thinks he needs to protect his friends from this. However, you don't need to have the exact same experiences to bond over them. It's a genuine start to get Angel Dust to open up and see he doesn't deserve this just for being a denizen of hell and being coerced by a manipulative freak to sign a contract. Husk is very willing to call Angel Dust out on considering resuming his drug habits after making the effort to get him to do better about his self-image. And this clearly pays off, whereas we see him in the same episode standing up to Val. We even see this change in the finale, because they all have one night to do whatever they want. And what Angel Dust wants to do is not to have meaningless sex. Meaningless sex is all fine and dandy, but he's clearly using it as a coping mechanism. He wants to have a drink with his friend. Sashmore, I mean, come on, look at the way he's looking at him. Look at this! What Husk and Angel Dust see in each other is a shared pain from this society. Not one-to-one, but their traumas from addiction and self-worth is exploited and perpetuated by the same social mores. And this tells them they are nothing. And they find each other under the same roof as someone who, in spite of all her flaws and privileges, saw something in them. And I think this is where Charlie's redemption path is heading, and what I think will get sinners into heaven even if she's not aware of it. Not redemption through good deeds and penance, but by communal healing and solidarity. Look at Serpentius. He doesn't sacrifice himself to prove his worth or repent his sins. He does it to protect the hotel, his new family, and arrives in heaven. This is the part where I'll probably get contradicted by the show. As I'm writing this, season 2 isn't out yet. It's out in a couple of days. I don't fucking this video in that time. Even then, I think the question, how did Serpentius become a soul of heaven, won't really be answered by that season's end, but who knows. I still think this has a lot to say about the best way to get past systemic abuses and the trauma of corrupt societies is community spirit and sharing the burden. It's what is believed to be the best way to social justice in the real world. I know I said I'd analyze Loser Baby and didn't, analyze it all that much. Hell, I barely played the song. Oh God, I wonder why that is.
They're fucking singing? Get 'em!
My point was more that it is at the epicenter of this theme of communal bonding, which I think is vital to the show. Charlie's mission is important because it's important to everybody else, and we're seeing how it is helping them to get better. This is how I think they will win and defeat Heaven's artificially held hierarchy that is destroying sinners, a lot of whom do not deserve the way they are treated. Well, maybe some of them do. Vox seems like a prick. They don't gotta do trust falls or defeat their inner evil or do a big, broad sacrifice. They gotta eat shit together. Maybe then things will end up differently. Anyway, I'm sorry I acted like Hazbin Hotel has something to say. If you have an issue with this, please go to @Brandon and board it in.
You're a loser, baby, a loser, goddamn baby. You're a fucked up little whiny bitch. You're a loser just like me. You're a screw loser and only one star user. You're a power bottom at rock bottom, but you got company. I don't know what I'm doing. Please purchase Hazbin Hotel Season 2 on Amazon Prime Video. Available at all good retailers.